You're not actually evil, bro. You don't actually want to be evil. You're not actually as evil as you think you are. You're not actually as diabolical as you think you are. Yes, you may have done some things in the past. Maybe your life has had a lot of things to which the average person wouldn't think is normal, right? The average rational person. But you're not actually evil unless you truly want to see the end of life on Earth or the end of the planet itself. Unless you are truly somebody who is aligned with destruction of the planet, the human, yourself, and all living things, life itself, you are not evil. And that's pretty much nobody. Everybody wants to live. You'd have to be completely suicidal, as in accept that as a life path. Like you are destined to destroy your life and others' lives for the rest of your life. That means you technically are evil. But most people don't do that because they seek to have some sort of relation to other people. People seek validation from one another. They seek companionship, right? Or relationships. And that means that there is an inner drive within them that seeks to live long enough to at least be able to experience that continuously, right? If you still have the will to eat and drink and sleep, it's because you wish to keep doing that. You wish to see another day, which means that you advocate for at least your own life. That doesn't mean you're evil. Okay? That doesn't mean that you are aligned with it either. If you don't want to advocate for life whatsoever in any shape or form, whether human, animal, or creature or whatnot, then you can say you're evil. You could say that you don't care at all about what reality looks like, so long as it's destroyed and you are a part of that, right? And I think most people, they assume they're evil because there are a lot of times where people find it difficult to seek companionship or at least seek to be a part of something. And since the norm here around many places on the earth or in different areas in different countries and continents, people decide that to be your freest self is to do anything, which is true. But there's always some sort of caveat to that. There's always something that you can't do, right? Because you feel like it's too much, or because you feel like it wouldn't help you or help somebody else, right? And that means that there is a limit inside of you. You have a limit to what you would expose yourself to or what you would do. Now you can say, well, I've seen everything. I've done practically everything I wanted to, and I continue to seek more things to do, right? Which is, a thing to want to do. But it doesn't mean that you're evil if you're not aligning that ideology with destruction of everything. You see what I'm saying? You're not some incel loser who's mad at the world and wants to destroy the world, right? I mean, sure, there are people like that, but if you're watching this, you're probably not that. If you are, I hope this helps you, or like somebody helps you out, because I don't know what to tell you, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, you're not actually evil unless you want destruction. Now, yes, you could have been somebody who has spent their life psychologically abusing people. You could have been somebody who has spent their life torturing others. You could have been somebody who has spent your life for yourself at the expense of everybody else around you. Projecting, triangulating, doing whatever the fuck you want to get that kick, that humor, that sadistic humor kick that most people drive for, that most people put their life force into. But all that means is you seek to live to get that sadistic humor. You seek to be alive to continue doing that until you die. That doesn't mean you're evil. That just means you have an addiction to sadistic humor. You could be somebody who has spent their life unaliving people. But if there is a limit in you, I really hate to even use this kind of language, but if there is a limit in you, if you're somebody who is doing it off of a certain moral ground, or if you've done it because you believe that some people need to be removed, and you know what, I agree, some people do need to be removed because they actually are evil, and those people, yeah, need to be gone, right? So say you're somebody who has spent your life unaliving those kinds of people. That doesn't mean you're evil. You spent your life removing those kinds of people because you know they're evil. And if they continue doing what they're doing, that ruins your life, which means you're advocating for your life as well as the livelihood of everybody else that interacts with those kinds of people, which means you are not evil, even if you're unaliving specific kinds of people. Now, if you're just randomly unaliving, then yes, you could say you're evil, right? That's a disease. That's a mental illness. That's something that has to be fixed. And when it becomes addiction, we have a problem, because addictions are really difficult to break, and we don't have the time to allow somebody to build up that addiction and then have to psychologically come out of that somehow through, I don't know, some sort of helping or rehabilitation. But most likely, if you're somebody that's like that, you're already somebody that's spotlighted. Like, they know who you are. You've probably been in prison. You've probably been in and out. Anyways, the worst of them stay in there forever. Now, I believe it's to rehabilitate them, but most people just don't get rehabilitated. And it becomes an expense to keep them alive, right? The prison system is kind of a joke. There is really not much that they do to help those kinds of people who actually do have an addiction to doing that arbitrarily to people who shouldn't have had that happen to them. And they usually just accept that that's who they are and don't want to change, mainly because this system upholds addiction. I actually have a problem with addiction, and it's really like, it's something that I used to not think is too bad, but when you think about it, anything in excess can become an addiction, which then becomes a problem because it's going to take that much energy from your life, right? When you want to do things, when you want to experience things, and when you have a drive to want to do things, your time or your mind is focused on that addiction because you've allowed yourself to acclimate to a point to where now you're spending a whole lot of energy for that thing, whatever it is, right? So the US is indirectly the enabler of addictions. You are enabled to have whatever addiction you want, so long as it is not too detrimental to people, yourself, or the planet. But even then, sometimes they don't care, right? It depends how intelligent you are and how aware you are of specific things. So addiction is actually how you are allotted some sort of legitimacy in this system, so to speak. So basically, if you have something that you continually need or want to get, it's weaponized against you in consumership. And so you continually go for that thing somehow, some way, right? Through money or through validation or through some sort of need, right? And then that is enabled by the US, so that way you can continue doing that thing at your own expense. And they don't care, so long as it's not too detrimental. So if this thing is harm, torture, or killing, and it's arbitrary, then it becomes a problem, and then you are considered evil at that point, right? But if you personally have the addiction, but you have standards, you have morals, you have limits, and you're not somebody who wishes to do that your entire life, you're just stuck in that loop right now, then you're not actually evil. This video is not an attempt to humanize psychological killers, because I know that's kind of what that's kind of being elicited here, but not really. So we need to understand that some people they can't get over themselves. They can't get over their fixations and their addictions and their needs and their wants, and they feel as if it doesn't matter. If I can continue getting this enabled somehow, some way, I'll keep doing it, right? The controllers of this system, we definitely are pointing a precise eye on them right now, because what I'm describing kind of sounds like them to a degree, right? People who want full control over your life, that kind of sounds like it would be, arbitrarily bound and wanting to see the sadistic torture of people, which is kind of the case here. Some people do have to experience that because it's being enabled, and because they have a drive and addiction to want to keep doing that. The whole reason that this system hasn't been dismantled is because of that addiction to control that they have. Now, they're attempting to keep us from being aware of this, right, through manipulation and coercion. So they keep you sated or distracted through whatever it is that you do in life, your jobs, your family, or your career, or your creativity, right? Those things you keep wanting to go for, or your addictions. And they enable it so that way you never focus on them, because they wish to continue to have control over you. The control aspect is for you to not understand who they are, not try to think about it, spiritually try not to process what they're doing to you and everybody else, and then keep you at a low vibration so you're not energetic enough to want to be more aware or more intelligent. Right? Now, you could say that's evil, and I kind of agree with that, but they're not trying to end you outright. They do allow you to be who you want to be and do what you want, but they don't mitigate for too much harm. They allow harm. They allow dominion over one another. They allow people to control people, which is kind of bad. It's actually pretty bad, actually, not kind of. That's pretty bad. You shouldn't want to control somebody else. You shouldn't spend your life trying to control them either. That's really ridiculous. Some of us who get targeted or who have to deal with organized harassment, I'll say, are being coercively controlled, right, by others. And sometimes we don't know who these people are. That's a form of indirect evil, but it's not really too bad, because you could still break out mentally if you are aware of what they're doing, the tactics, and you can preserve yourself mentally and energetically. Then there is a way for you to escape, and that is allowed, right? So because that's allowed, it's evil, but there's still an escape route. If there's no escape, that's evil. That's detrimental. That's decomposing. So that's kind of why this culture that we see around here with people in general is to want to get life for yourself. You know what I'm saying? You want to work life for yourself. You want to try to make your life as beneficial to you by yourself. If you can get help, that is beautiful. But most likely you're going to have to do most things alone. Just because people are really superficial, and most people have been told you got to do it by yourself anyway. And that's why they end up doing things by themselves. And the ones who do end up having help usually don't have positive help. There is some expense, some extraction, because everybody is coercive of one another and does seek to have some sort of control for monetary gain out of one another if possible. Right? Most people are programmed to only want to seek companionship if there's some value, whether that be through intelligence, intellect, status, or money. Many things can be weaponized against you in order to have some sort of stake for yourself. But if you have limits, if you have morals, if you have goals, if you wish to do things, and if you wish to uphold your life as well as somebody else's life in the future, whether you want a family or some sort of companionship, and you just so happen to also have an addiction to something that is portrayed or is seen as evil, right, by communities, or publicly seen as evil, you are addicted. You can be addicted to it, but that doesn't mean that you're evil. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just have an addiction to wanting to see that. You just have a want or a drive to want to do or engage in that. Okay? If you do want to have a drive to do things that involves unaliving arbitrarily, then yes, that's evil. Because you're going at the expense of something else that's living. That is a form of evil. Now, I know some people are going to come on here and say, but what about carnivores, or what about deer hunting, or maybe stepping on insects or something? It varies, and this is kind of why we have this kind of stuff is really debatable. But when you are against something of equal consciousness to you, so another human being, or at least something understandable to you that can perceive what you're doing, and you know what you're doing affects them, and they know, and you have a drive to end them for no reason, and they know, that's evil. If the awareness is lost on their end, it's debatable, but you seeking to end them for a sadistic drive for no reason is evil. But if you don't want to continue doing that for the rest of your life, you're not actually evil. You just have the addiction. I hope I got that clear enough. Really difficult to kind of get this stuff off to people because this is really touchy stuff. This is not something that you would hear every day. I kind of just think of this stuff, man, and I just let it out. And, I like to hear what you guys would say about that, because I know this stuff is really touchy. But personally, I know that I'm somebody who's never wanted to engage in that kind of stuff or be sadistic and be addicted to it, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous to human life, okay? And if you think about it, I was gonna get on to carnivores. Carnivores are doing it to live. They actually are trying to live. So when they hunt, like when lions hunt deers, it's because they want to live. So that's a necessary evil. You know what I'm saying? Maybe there's some sort of way to get to evolve carnivores. I don't know. Like I really like thinking out of the box, but maybe. But anyways, that's a necessary evil. Now we're omnivores, so we have the ability to eat the meat of animals we kill or eat plants. So if you don't have plants available to you at a certain point in time, and you're really in need of eating, and there's an animal that you can eat, that's a necessary evil, and that's okay. That's part of life. But if you're doing it arbitrarily for no reason, and you have an addiction to it, and you don't want to stop it, you want to continue enabling it and acclimating it, that's evil. Even if it is possibly to keep yourself sated, right, for that time. If you don't seek to stop, if your drive is 100% to do that for the sadistic intent that you get from it, or from the sadistic dopamine hit that you get from that, that's evil. And you don't want to stop, that's evil. Hope I spoke on that well enough. Let me know what you guys thought. I don't know, what more to say about this. I'm not really too involved with the specifics of evil acts, but I know that some people do want to know, like, what's the difference, and is there debatable things to handle with. But anyways, that's what I want to get on, and I'll see you guys in the next one.